Okay, so Prism versus Vynnset. I've had specifically Prism Awakener of Soul, if this is ever being watched in the far, far future. This is a matchup I've gotten a lot of questions about because it's a very difficult matchup. Vynnset has a lot of tools that line up fairly well into us. Yeah. That being said, I've found a plan that I'm reasonably happy with. I feel like I still have room to push it forward, and I've had decent results into most Vynnset players. The exception being Mara, of course. She's probably by far the best Vynnset player that I've played against. And we've also played the matchup a handful of times, so she knows what's going on. And we've talked about the matchup a lot. She's one of my testing partners, so I wanted to give basically an outline of what I'm doing, and then also going up with this is going to be a gameplay review of a paper game I got with her this past weekend, while we were at when we met up with some other friends for a draft camp, and we managed to record a game. So hopefully breaking that down, talking about the game plan, and then having this as a general reference, and that is a specific example. So Prism versus Vynnset. I do think this is Prism's most technical matchup. It is the most difficult matchup to execute correctly. The margins are extremely fine. It is probably the most difficult aura plan for sure. It's more difficult than any of the herald plans. You usually have to ride a very fine line, but this one requires you to make the most correct choices. In my opinion, it's definitely harder to execute than the Enigma matchup, which requires you to make a few correct choices, but feels much more out of my hands than this matchup does. Now, we're going to have to break some rules for this matchup. I've had some kind of rules that I've been setting up, and this is a matchup where I think we need to break them. So, running hair, I want to start from kind of ground one, or ground zero. First point, start from the beginning. Running heralds into Vynnset. This is what we did before Rosetta. It was reasonably successful. They didn't have enough Runegate cards in their deck to use them as poppers and as offensive threats, which meant their hero ability was a detriment, and we could force them into awkward spots extremely easily, very easily. Now, if you watched, was that my last video? It was the last one I posted. How decks deal with heralds is high popper count, high armor count, and high D-react count are the primary things that they can do. Now, Vynnset has all of those. She has a high popper count, and she has poppers to spare now, post Rosetta, because she can run all the 3 costs very easily. She has a high armor count. Just even if they're on Vexing and they're on Grimoire, so they don't have Oval or Grasp, they still have Carapace, which is very good, and Face Purgatory is just a house. It's going to clean cover a full Herald and potentially take a second one. And then high D-react count. Most Vynnsets I'm seeing on minimum 6 reacts, probably 9, because they want renditions and reduces, and then some mix of shelter, sync, or otherwise. So Vynnset just has all of these. All of the things that deal with heralds. There are a lot of Vynnset. The first time I played this matchup post Rosetta, I think Mara was at 32 when I died. It just felt like a brick wall that I couldn't do anything against. And I got to refine it a little bit and do something, but it wasn't going to work. It wasn't the plan. It's not enough. We can't get through it. And that's pretty much been the consensus for a lot of Prism players. I don't think this is a surprise if you've played the matchup. It doesn't work. They just have everything to deal with it. You have the Reprimand, they have the D-react. You have the Wrath, they have the D-react. You have the Wrath to go over Purgatory, they have the D-react and can still send 8 at you, or 9, or 10. They can block with 3 cards, a piece of armor, and then send 8 to 10 back at you, and you're gonna die in 4 turns, and it just doesn't work. So, what's our other game plan? Our other game plan is auras. How decks deal with auras is on-demand action points, having a fast clock, being very aggressive, and lots of go again. Now, Vynnset has access to some action points with Eloquence tricks. She has to do kind of funky things for it, but it's doable. She can't use creepers to really get around Spectra. She has to have played an attack action card, and then she can creepers to get into it, but she can't send the attack at an aura to start, and then creepers. It's a little tricky. She's got something there, but it's not like Scabs. Scabs is not on the board. Fast clock. She's got a reasonably fast clock. Once she gets her setup going, she can send 9 or 10 at you at least every turn with like 2 cards, which means her like turn-to-turn value is very good, or even 1 card. And if you give her space to set up, she can send 18 damage at you. Not necessarily easily, but on enough turns where it's scary, and that's going to put you on a clock. And lots of go again, not a ton again. Some. They've got tears and puppetries. They might have some Mauvrian Skies. They've got machinations for sure. So they're on like 9 at least go again things where they can go again enabler, big attack, flail at your Spectra aura, which isn't terrible. That's not terrible for us, but it's also like it's a weird middle ground. So like Vynnset has access to all of these, but they're all just a little awkward. The clock is just there. That's what she does. But the action points in the go again to like efficiently clear Spectra is not super easy. It's not free. I'll put it that way. It's not free for Vynnset. So what do we do from here? If this maybe doesn't work, like Vynnset's clock is pretty fast, and if we do the usual thing, we might just die, especially like if we try and pivot when we're at 4 and then they can just shadow non-attack us out. Stuff gets weird. So what do we want to do? How do we gain something in this matchup? Because it's pretty easy against like Jarl to gain something from the aura plan. But Vynnset is a little weird, especially with Rune Chance going over Spectra that can clear our angels, and it can be a huge pain. And we just lose a ton of value on those angels potentially going away. So how would I go forward from here? Because I started just like with an aura plan and seeing what happened. And I wanted to take a step back and look at the basics of kind of how Vynnset works, which is it's built around Rune Gate. Duh. They banish a card every turn, it makes a Rune Chant, and then they want to attack with this large thing that costs 0 because of the Rune Gate mechanic. They have Rune Chants greater than or equal to the cost, and then they can play it, or its printed cost, and then they can play it for free without having to pitch. This allows them to go very above rate. They need to generate Rune Chants for it, but they can do wildly above rate things where they have 1-card 10s, essentially. It's closer to like 6 value per card, but it's still very good, obviously. So, and they need to generate these Rune Chants somehow. That's typically Dirge and the incantations, Vynnset ability, Deathly Wails. They have a lot of tools now for generating Rune Chants and for spreading them out. That was one of the big things before for Vynnset, is the Rune Chants couldn't be spread out. And now they can. Dirge is a great emergency release, or break in case of emergency card, but Malefic Incantation is really like the glue that makes this deck work. 0 cost, spreads out the Rune Chants, does basically everything Vynnset wants except block 3. Not that they block with these cards much anyways. Runeblood Incantation, still very good. Doesn't need the attack. You can block 4 cards with it. It'll make a Rune Chant, and then you can be ready to go next turn. Does cost 1, slightly more awkward. Now, what if we can mess with that engine? Because there's a couple play patterns that Vynnset really likes. And the biggest one is those Malefics of block with 3 cards, have 2 Malefics on the board, banish a 3 cost, make a Rune Chant, play the 3 cost with the 2 Malefics that carried over from last turn. So you're you're attacking with 1 card, you're blocking with 3 cards, and you're sending 10 damage. And you're making 2 more Rune Chants on the back. And then you can just do that again the next turn as long as you have 2 Malefics. It just keeps going. If you have 1 Malefic and you find a reduce, then you get to that 3 and you can just keep doing your thing. But what if we can get in the middle of that and mess with those Malefics in particular? Because Rune Chants trigger when they attack Spectra. So that game plan of Go Again Enabler, Runegate at face, Flail a Spectra, you make the rune chants on the back from the Malefic, and then those rune chants get spent when they swing the flail, which means they don't have them for next turn. This puts Spectra right in the middle of their play pattern. And taking those rune chants away can leave them stranded with a card and banish. But that's not even the big thing. It means they might not be able to attack us next turn. It forces them to do awkward stuff. It forces them to dirge when they don't want to. It forces them to play out extra auras when they don't want to, break vexing when they don't want to, creepers when they don't want to. It forces them to make awkward decisions that their deck isn't necessarily built to handle. So how much can we push this? How much can we use this? And can this is this us answering their plan? Because you don't want to be the one. We don't want to be the deck that is answering questions. Prism isn't good as a deck that's answering questions. It wants to be the one asking questions. And I think this gives us an avenue to not just answer their game plan, but to attack it. To be the one asking the question again of make your deck function or give me heralds that are going to be above rate. You get one purgatory, and then I will push through everything you have because you can't block 4 cards on me every turn when you can't pop. When I have Arclight Sentinel out, you have to do something because you can't just sit there. What happens if we start asking those questions of them and we start messing with their deck? This is where I went after I played like just a couple games. And I was like, okay, I'm going to push further on this. Now to do this, there's a couple rules that we need to break. We're not playing our normal aura plan. We can't play our normal aura plan. Vynnset's clock is weird. If they ever get a random double banish turn, we can die in 3 turns if we say no blocks. So we have to break that rule. That's my favorite rule for the deck, is you say no blocks. That should be your default. Find a way to make it work when you say no blocks. The deck goes way above rate when you keep all 4 cards. The difference between a 3-card hand and a 4-card hand is insane. The difference between a 4-card hand and a 5-card hand is even bigger. But we can't do that in this matchup. They have instant speed disruption, as well as on pain effects. So we're not just stopping on hits. We can't let the split damage from Florian through. Like we can't let the split damage through like we do against Florian or Verdance. We have to stop. If we want to stop like rune chant generating effects, like a Deathly Wail that they didn't have a shadow puppetry for, and if it's the difference between them having 0 and 1 rune chant before they banish a card at the start of their turn, that's a big difference because that goes from the 3 eloquent eulogies to the eloquent eulogies plus the widespread runes plus the phantom wraiths that they can play. That's a big difference. But it also is about protecting our life total. But then it's about Succumb to Temptation, which can give them a free action point to swing Flail to break Spectra. I want them to work for their action points. And then there's also Cull. Both of these things are very difficult to deal with and play around. And Cull in particular against us can be very punishing just because of the way our hands can line up. I play this, as a result, I'm playing this much more defensively than any other Aura games. It's weird, but I think it's roughly where I'm at. I think I need to be a little bit more aggressive than I have been, but I think this is a decent spot so far, or a decent like avenue to take. Second rule that we need to break. Halo is not primarily for Figment of Judgment. I think I'm going to get some pushback on this one. And I think I can't keep using Halo for Figment of Judgment, at least in my game plan, because it doesn't do enough. It just doesn't. It's just a crutch. It's just a band-aid. It's just like, it just buys us a turn, but if we're not doing anything with that turn, what's the point? And now, if things line up really nicely and you already have like Erudition out on the field and You can Halo for Judgment, flip one of their things face down, and then go into your Erudition turn. Sick. Love it. That's fantastic. But I don't always have Figments out that early. I can get Soul pretty easily, because I got Soul Shields and I got Mercifuls that they have to answer. But I'm not getting Figments out super early. Not reliably, at least. So, this is not the primary use of Halo anymore. It's an Erudition thing again, like it is in other aura plans. We need to make more auras than they can deal with. Well, this might be the one matchup where that isn't necessarily true, because just making a couple can actually, like one or two on a turn, can actually be pretty detrimental for them, depending on the hand. But we do at some point need to kind of pivot. We do still need to pivot. And I think Erudition has to be the way we do that. So then the third rule that we need to break. And this is going to be kind of emblematic. And this is reaching back to one of the earlier videos, which is Genesis is not primarily a combo piece. We don't need it to be the thing that is in our arsenal ready to go when we Halo for Erudition. And then drop an ALS in front of it. It's nice if it is. It's great if it is. Because it's very difficult for them to deal with a double Spectra turn. It really is. And it's something that I probably should be playing to more in the matchup if I can. But this is something where it's like Genesis is not the end-all be-all in this matchup. And that's because I've had a hard time getting Figments out in the matchup. It's not surprising. And maybe it's because I'm playing the matchup too slow and too conservatively. But Genesis doesn't snowball quite as hard because you need other pieces, a lot of other pieces around it. And I don't have enough Figments necessarily out to support it. And then it's still good, don't get me wrong. But if my pivot turn doesn't have a Genesis, I can still be very happy with that pivot turn. If it's a parable with it, I'm totally okay with ALS. I'm totally okay with that. If it's a Merciful with ALS, I'm totally okay with that. If it's not Genesis, that's fine. But all of our Spectra auras have different priorities now when we play this matchup, because it's not a true aura game. We can actually win this matchup by just playing one aura a turn, because it's difficult for them to answer, because it messes with their deck to answer. They can't just hammer it. They burn actual resources out of their deck to swing a weapon at a Spectra aura. And I want to use that. I want to fight them on that. I want them to do that. I want them to swing weapon with 3 rune chants, and those rune chants are gone forever. They can't get them back. Which means however they made them is just gone. So Spectra by itself has value, and that changes the priorities on these Spectra auras as a result. And I'll do I'll come back to that in a minute. I want to go through all the Spectra auras that I have in my deck currently, and how they affect the matchup. Arclight Sentinel. They have Eloquence tricks to get around it, but it's still very impactful. All the rune chants still go over. So if they go like Flail, Hold Priority, Eloquence, Cull, all the rune chants still go over. They still can't rune gate anything. Their deck still becomes much more inefficient as soon as you have an Arclight out. You can't protect Angels with it, the same way you do in other matchups, but it's still good. I wouldn't be surprised if I ended up at 2 of these at some point, but I still think they're worthwhile enough to keep in, especially if I get the Genesis ALS Shariah out. Even if they can snipe Shariah over with an unpreventable rune chant, having Genesis out can be like such a massive boon to the deck, obviously. Like, Vestige instantly online, flip another Figment, go. Especially if I have Judgment out and I can get that ability. Like, ALS buying me a turn or half a turn is still extremely useful. But it's also still, it is significantly less good than it was before, because it can't guarantee protect our Angels the way it can in other matchups. Genesis turns on Vestige, and then it's fuel for Angels. Bellana starting to swing for 5 to pressure their life total when they're low. Ravages swinging for 4 and 2 Arcane when they're low. Rebirth buying back Heralds of Judgment or Triumph even to continue pressuring their life total and getting Figments out on the board. And then still, even the Spectral Shields can be worth it. They can just get blown up. But try and cash in the Spectral Shields as soon as you get them. Get that ward value and use it to keep cards in your hand. Merciful Retribution. This card's great. This card is probably better than Genesis. Guarantees Herald into Soul. You can sit on it in your arsenal and wait for another piece to come along. Like Genesis, play it. Genesis goes into arsenal, chillin'. Guaranteeing a Herald into Soul because Heralds become on hit or on pop go to Soul, which means Figments get to come out, which means you can get effectively D-reacts. Turn the yellow no blocks into D-reacts. Your deck blocks surprisingly well in this matchup for how many no blocks you have, simply because you're using Arcane Barrier. But also, if you can get a couple Figments that you can use defensively, I'm very okay with that. It's very useful, especially in converting those hands where like you might get stuck with a Wrath that you just can't use for whatever reason. Passing Mirage, Herald threat. All your Heralds become really good 2-card hands. 2-card hands I found are typically better into Vynnset than others because Purgatory priority suddenly goes down. Herald of Judgment that doesn't have Phantasm is great. And then this is also a 0-cost. 0-cost Spectra is so good in this matchup. This can be a totally fine play of AB3 block 6 on a Deathly Whale, play Passing Mirage, pass. Did I just... If you stop them from getting all their rune chants, what do they do? Are they going to burn a rune chant, flail, passing, and you're like, okay, now I get to send just double Triumph. And then you're cooked. Like, I could just really start pressuring your hand and take Figments. Like, the 0-cost Spectra is really good. Even Pierce Reality, just like turning your... It is mostly a Herald of Triumph threat, but it's also one they might accidentally let go at some point. And then if you can, like, War Tune Merciful in response to them popping War Tune, then things get weird. And Pierce suddenly gets really good. And it's like you find one of your red Triumphs and it's at 9. And Purgatory doesn't cover it, even when they give 2-3 blocks with Purgatory. Pierce will sneak up on them. It is probably the weakest of the Spectra auras, but don't discount the 0-cost Spectra plays. Parable. Oh my god, this is my favorite card in the matchup. Oh lord, it's so good. It's so good in the matchup. Like, it just does everything. It drops their deck to 3 poppers for all of your Heralds, and it makes your Triumphs unpoppable. It's so good. Oh my goodness, this card is fantastic in this matchup. It will get value. I've had Parable stick for 5, 6, 7 turns because they're just like, they don't have an efficient way to clear it. Or because my first turn, I slammed Merciful, and then the next, they didn't hit it. And the next turn I went Parable Pierce. And just like, the game is over. It's not over. But they're like so far behind. And I will be at 20 and be happy with that. Like, Parable is my favorite card in the matchup. And it probably skews me into running Parable when I maybe shouldn't. Like, that's how powerful Parable is in this matchup. Yeah, card's just great. So what is my piecing it all together, what does it kind of look like? I'm going to take things slow. They're probably going to give you a turn or two to get started, get their engine online, and get their like consistent rune gate every turn. Resolve a couple Spectra auras, get a couple cards in Soul. Spectra will buy you time by consuming rune chants, by preventing them from attacking you on a second turn. So you're kind of inducing these off turns, or attempting to induce these off turns. Look for a turn to pivot around Shariah and take control of the game. Taking these things, I want to like give a rough blueprint of what my games have looked like. Just so it's like a frame of reference of where you want to be at in the game. And it's a standard, it looks kind of like a normal aura plan. Except for there's one key thing you need to keep in mind for this. First 1 to 2 turns, develop a couple Spectra auras. Be willing to take some damage for this. Get them to burn rune chants. Stress their deck. They haven't had time to find Malefics necessarily. Force them into awkward spots early with Spectra auras. Also get 1 to 3 cards in Soul if the Spectras are merciful, or if you find Soul Shields. Great. Get a couple cards into Soul. Then around the 20-ish life mark, find a Parable or a Genesis. Honestly, I'm putting Parable in there because it just makes all the Heralds into Triumphs or better. and then it's very difficult for them to stop you actually after you take that pivot. Parable, Genesis, ALS into Arsenal. I'm adding Parable into the combo portion here because it's that good in the matchup. It really is that good. Just you take less damage, it slows down their clock, and it just makes it impossible basically to block us. And it's Passing Mirage that works on both heralds. That's great. That's crazy. Around the 15-ish life mark, this is where you need to pivot with Shariah. You cannot go down to like 3 against Vynnset and pivot like you do against other decks. Unless I guess you have Invoke Shariah or something in your deck with like War Cries. Maybe you can then because you're like, I'll just Invoke Shariah and send it for 8 lifelink. And then they're like, what do I do with that? Maybe you can do that there, but I've been pivoting around the 15 life mark in most of my games, and it's been about where I want to be. It gives me room to play the game and not be afraid of just like a two wide turn from them. I'm not worried about just dying in 3 turns because I took 1 rune chant and then they sent 2 unpreventable. This is where you need to pivot in this matchup, which is very different from other matchups where it's like life total's irrelevant in other matchups. It is irrelevant in other matchups, especially the Aura plans where it's like, yeah, I'm at 3. That's fine. I have Genesis, Merciful, ALS, Passing Pierce out with 2 Angels flipped. That game's over. You've won that game. That's not how this matchup works. You can't do that. You have to pivot with room to spare so that you can take damage to send Heralds of Triumph to set up another Passing or another Parable. You have to have life total when you pivot here. Your life total matters. So then the last 2 pieces here, protect your life total, block. Block AB, all of it. Be efficient with your cards. Don't let them have free rune chants off Deathly Whales. Don't let them have free Eloquence tokens either. Because Eloquence tokens, even just sneaky ones that are just like Sonata Galaxia gets go again without paying. That's just a free Malefic out of their deck. Find a spot for Figment of Judgment to get value. This is so important. This is the equivalent of getting your Figment of Protection turn, where you make 2 Spectral Shields, in your aggro matchups, in your Flick Knives matchups. This is the equivalent of that. That's how important this is to winning games. That's how much this moves the needle in terms of winning games. It's so important. And use the Angel's ability. The Angel's ability works. And some Vynsets will be like, oh, that's fine, you cleared my blood debt. And it's like, yeah, I also didn't just take 9. Most Vynnset decks weren't necessarily built to clear blood debt super efficiently, so you could kind of drown them in blood debt if they messed up. They're all built to clear blood debt now. They can all do that. Take the cards out of Banish. Flip them. Take the attacks away from them. This is something that I have just in the last couple days realized where this needs to fit into the game plan, because I was like, oh, I'm just not going to Halo for Figment of Judgment. If I find it, it's neat. If it lines up, it's fine. No. Finding a place where this matters is so important. When you're messing with their rune chants like this, they'll end up with cards stuck in blood debt because they had to banish it, go to 1 rune chant, and play something out of hand. And then, if they can't clear your Spectra on that turn, you get a Herald to hit, you get Judgment, you turn that card and banish face down, and they lose their free attack. It prevents a 2-wide from hitting you. It prevents you from taking 6, 7, 9 damage, something like that. Find spots for them. This is your Aegis turn. This is the same as your Archangel of Protection turn into your Flick Knives matchups, where it's like, oh, they just can't Flick Knives, they get locked out, their turn just falls apart and becomes inefficient because they can't get Vest or whatever it is. This is that. And this is something that I need to focus more on it personally, because I know that I messed this up this weekend. I know I didn't prioritize this properly. And I know this is something that I need to do. Because if I'm not going to be haloing for it to try and get the value there where it's it's fine, it's a crutch. No, I want this Herald on hit to also be gain 9. That's way better than gain 4 with Rapture. That's pretty good. Especially because on those 2-wide turns, they're going to get all their on-pain effects. They're going to get the Annihilation effect, so you banish a card from hand, or the Deathly Whale effect that sets them up for next turn, even though they went 2-wide. This is so much more important than I was giving it credit for. So, with that, this is like theoretically how I'm playing the matchup, how I'm approaching the matchup. Because I don't think there's a solution with heralds. Like Warcry can maybe do something, but the issue is getting heralds to hit, getting them into soul. You don't have enough soul anyways in that for Warcry to work. You could maybe fit Warcries into this plan and actually be sick. It wouldn't surprise me if it was great in this plan, because as soon as they go for like a shadow thing, you discard the Warcry, banish an extra soul because you've got the soul shields and the mercifuls and stuff, and you just start like sniping culls and deathly whales. Like that could be real. I don't have space for it at the moment, but maybe once Aurora's gone and they're like Vynnset's like the rune blade along with Florian, maybe there's space then. But I don't know. This matchup is really fun. It's really interesting. It is tough. It's really tough. But yeah, I'm gonna be putting up a gameplay review with this. I got to record a game with Mara over the weekend. It is not my best showing. I'm not super happy with the way I played the game, but I think there's a lot to learn for me and other people, and it is something that I'm still working on. So that should be going up right alongside this. I think next I'm going to be doing kind of a generic Herald aggro video where I go over some of the principles that I work with in those game plans. It's not quite as deep as the Aura plan, obviously, but it has a lot of nuances that I think are really important for playing the deck and playing it well. And there's some stuff that has really served me well in the past couple months playing the deck that I think people miss a lot, just besides the Angelic Wrath stuff. So, hope maybe that'll be up this weekend. If not, probably right before I go to London or on the way. I will be playing Prism in London. I don't know how to play anything else at this point, I think. So yeah, that'll be it for this one. Peace.